Today on an all-new Dr. Phill. There was an awful lot of mixed messaging. If you're fully vaccinated, you do not need a mask. If vaccinated, you should wear a mask.
The message has been very poor. It continues to be poor.
Are we likely to see another pandemic of a similar magnitude?
There's no doubt. I call it the Great Pandemic, and I don't say this lightly.
Let's do it.
Have a good show, everybody. Here we go.
This is a safe place to talk about hard things.
Stand by. We'll count you down.
Today is going to be a changing day in your life.
5, 4.
Get ready to take care of you. Yesterday, we started our two-part deep dive into the aftermath of the pandemic, the years of life lost, and how to recover from the emotional and educational toll. Here's what's happened so far.
COVID took a toll on all of us.
This pandemic is the toughest thing that most of us will go through in our lifetime.
Was any of this really necessary?
A new study is showing just how much of a toll it took on our students. Math scores dropped 7 points, while reading scores are down by 5 points.
Open up the schools would just, be opening up death traps for tons of kids.
Was this handled well?
The short answer is no.
Emergency departments saw a more than 30% spike in visits from children 12 to 17 years old for mental health reasons.
School should be the last thing to close and the first thing to open.
More than a third of high school students reported they experienced poor mental health during the pandemic. More than half reported they experienced emotional abuse by a parent or other adult.
We weren't letting science drive the narrative. Many people said that they felt it got politicized, and it did.
Dr. Fauci, knowing that it is a crime to lie to Congress. Senator Paul, you do not know what you are talking about, quite frankly. You're trying to obscure responsibility for 4 million people dying around the world from a pandemic.
Actually, closing schools kills people, too. It doesn't kill them today, but it kills them over time.
I think people are going to be shocked at the truth. Let me introduce Dr. Caprice Young. She is the superintendent of Learn for Life schools in LA and served 49,000 students in 5 states during the pandemic. She's also the former president of the Los Angeles Unified School District Board of Education. She says she was very much in favor of the school closures and wishes they had more flexibility because, Dr. Young, you say students are not one-dimensional. There are some that are really at risk, and
that's right.
Those that have different needs.
We were required to shut down the schools. I remember it vividly. It was Friday the 13th, March 13th, that it came down pretty much nationally on that day that by the following Monday, we all had to be closed. And what that immediately did was exacerbate all of the inequalities and inequities that are in our system. So I had students that we gave them hotspots. We gave them computers,
no cell towers.
But they had no cell towers, right? And they still don't, by the way. And that has got to be fixed. We had students who are living in multi-generational families. And when we saw COVID get into those multi-generational families, it whipped through 75% of the people in the household. So we absolutely had to be careful. But the problem was we were, in general, not allowed to have much flexibility. Thank goodness I was in a public charter school situation then, because at the time we were able to do one-on-one work with kids, still over Zoom, but it could be one-on-one instead of in, the Brady Bunch Zoom style.
Yeah, which doesn't work.
And it really doesn't very well. And truthfully, classroom instruction doesn't work for all kids either.
Right.
And when I'm thinking about this, I'm thinking about what are we going to do now, right? And we have to have a ton of one-on-one attention. And maybe what we need is not, 6 or 7 periods a day going from classroom to classroom. Maybe what we need is much more personalized attention, much more personalized curriculum, and a ton of support around the mental health challenges that our kids are facing.
Right. Corey, what do you want to say?
Yeah, I just want to point out, look, the positivity rates in the schools, and we had data on this for a very long time, was lower than the overall community. We had data from Brown University's Emily Oster showing this. So suggesting that reopening schools should not increase community transmission. But then we also, the teachers' union bosses were lobbying for more money. They also did lobby the CDC to change school reopening guidelines to make it more difficult to reopen schools. This is obtained through FOIA requests, public records requests. We have the emails back and forth. And we also had the White House FOIA emails considering the teachers union labor disputes in their reopening guidance as well. So we have this public information of the teachers unions lobbying to keep the schools closed. And just real quick, just look at how, yes, teachers are a great profession and we should respect them. We have teachers in the private sector as well. And look, there's a Catholic school in Sacramento. There was a county health order saying that it was okay for daycares to open, but if you were a school, you had to be closed because COVID knew if you were learning something, you had to shut down and it was going to get you. But this Catholic school, a private school in the Sacramento County area, actually rebranded itself as a daycare to get around the ridiculous regulation that only applied to schools and not daycares. But that just goes to show you they had an incentive to reopen because they knew if they didn't, their customers could vote with their feet and go elsewhere. Just like with private daycares, private grocery stores were open. Why was it okay for just about every other business, bars to be open, but not schools? We had the first things that should have been open closed the longest.
Well, there was one headline that said districts are using empty schools as expensive daycares, and tax-paying parents are being charged twice. You know, this needs to end.
This happened in at least 10 states. And the public schools that were saying it was not safe enough for in-person learning, they were closing the schools, they kept your tax money, and then parents had to pay up to $300-400 per child per week for the privilege of sending their kids to in-person schooling, which was daycaring. In the same public school buildings, they had to pay twice, and that just made no sense at all.
Yeah. Dr. Redfield, was it safe for kids to be in school, and were they as much an infection risk as adults?
A couple things here, Dr. Phill. First, I think that if you just want to look objectively, the safest place for K through 12s to be was in the schools. When we saw infections in kids in schools and we worked them up and we can sequence the virus and show where it came from, we showed that there wasn't virus going throughout the school. It was more like the virus that they got at the dinner table from their family members. Or when we found a teacher who she got infected, we found that it wasn't the virus from a classmate in the school. It was she got it from her husband or someone outside. So the schools really are a very safe place. Kids actually did get infected. If you looked, and it never got publicized much in the newspapers, but if you looked at the CDC data, if you look at infections per 100,000, the number one segment of our population per 100,000 that got infected were actually children between the age of 12 and 18. And if you look at the number two, it was actually children 5 to 11. So they were getting infected, but they weren't getting sick. And I think, so again, I think when you look at it, the children in K through 12 were much more likely to be infected from the community. I think
schools are back in session, but some students are still dealing with the consequences of the pandemic.
Research shows 8th grade students made up 8% of lost learning in reading last year, but it may take more than 5 years to completely catch up.
Our children were intended for face-to-face instruction. This is what is best for them, and so they have lost so much.
There was an awful lot of mixed messaging. I think you have to agree that there were contradictions, there was confusion with the messaging. And I've pulled up just a few things that Dr. Fauci said across time. He said we should not be walking with masks. And he said, well, masks might make people feel better. And then cloth coverings are adequate. Then, of course, we know that's not true. You don't have to have double masks. Put a cloth mask over it. Then masks are protective. Walk outdoors without a mask, yes. Then you don't need a mask indoors if you're vaccinated. And then children outside don't have to wear a mask. If you're fully vaccinated, you do not need a mask, then masks are not providing the perfect protection, then children should be wearing masks. If vaccinated and indoors, wear a mask. Vaccinated fully, don't need a mask indoors. If vaccinated, you should wear a mask. And I'm looking, wait a minute, you say masks are protective, then you say, well, no, they're not. Fully vaccinated, you don't need a mask. Then vaccinated, you should wear a mask. You don't need a mask indoors if vaccinated, and then vaccinated indoors, wear a mask. I mean, it's A, then B, then A, then B, then A, then B. Why was that? I know that the learning curve was vertical, but I'm wondering why there wasn't more care taken in what was being said. And it was like it was a new message hour by hour instead of waiting to figure it out. What's your take on that?
You know, I think the messaging was obviously highly suboptimal. Very frustrating for me personally, because I was the director of CDC, and I actually thought CDC should be directing the messaging, and that messaging should be the American public. It was very frustrating for me when the Secretary of Health basically limited and restricted CDC from communicating directly to the public. And you saw that Dr. Fauci became largely the spokesperson. You know, my view is there was a great failure in the public messaging. There's no doubt about it. Some of it, of course, is learning curve, but I always think you just be honest with the American public. You tell them what you know and you tell them what you don't know. You don't try to act like you know something that you don't know. And again, I went back to the one point that I think our response would have been better served if we had a national response rather than 50 different states and then multiple territories having their own response. But the messaging was not, and even to this day, I think the messaging still concluded. When you use that term fully vaccinated, what does that mean? Well, you got two shots, but after 6 months, those shots don't provide you any protection. So why are we telling people they're fully vaccinated when in fact they're no longer protected by vaccine unless they get an additional shot? And even if they get a booster, that loses its efficacy for protection against Omicron 5 probably in 4 months, maybe 5 months. So I think the messaging has been very poor. It continues to be poor. Obviously, it's an opportunity for people like yourself to have honest discussions to try to help. But I won't defend the messaging. I think it was it confused the American public. Even when my predecessor and the person that came after me, Rochelle, she got up and she made a comment on national news with the CDC backdrop behind her, and I don't remember exactly what the subject matter was, but she was very definitive about what she wanted the American public to do. And then the very next day, the White House press secretary said she wasn't talking as the CDC director; she was talking on her own personal point of view, and that's not the government's policy. So I think yes. A huge failure in messaging.
Coming up, what are the solutions to making up the learning loss during the pandemic? Because these kids have a gap, and if it doesn't get closed, all this modeling is going to come to pass. We'll be right back.
Online at home, to hybrid with no routine, to days missed because of COVID and contact tracing, it's been a challenging 2 years of school, and test scores show it.
We just knew that in-person schooling was important for kids to learn, right? If cyber school had worked over the past 15, 20 years, we would have had cyber charters that were getting way better results than our district schools. We had not seen that in the data ever.
We're talking about the impact on children during the pandemic. And what I'm trying to do is just get people to be honest about where we are and what we need to do. You were saying you guys were out there trying to help. I asked you about this wealth tax and Medicare that was said. There was another message that came from the LA Teachers Union president, that it was an excerpt from a Los Angeles magazine article. This was Cicely Myert Cruz. She said, Our kids didn't lose anything. It's okay that our babies may not have learned all of their times tables. They learned resilience, they learned survival, they learned critical thinking skills. They know the difference between a riot and a protest. They know the words insurrection and coup. She even went so far as to suggest darkly that, quote, learning loss is a fake crisis marketed by shadowy purveyors of clinical and classroom assessments. So is learning loss a fake crisis, Dr. Christakis?
No, it's not. I mean, you know, we've known about learning loss for a long time, actually. Summer learning loss is a well-described phenomenon that, unfortunately, like most things, disproportionately impacts low-income children and children of color, that when they come back to school in the fall, they've regressed a little bit from the spring because they've been out of school, which is very nice, but a 3 or 4 month summer break where you're not keeping up with reading and math, many kids regress. And schools have typically spent the fall trying to bring kids back up to school, up to speed. This has been an argument for a long time for having year-round schooling, as many other countries do, having shorter breaks interspersed throughout. I think that was a good idea before. I think it's absolutely necessary now. The best estimates are from the United States now, based on recent data, that the learning loss we're seeing is about a half a year to 3/4 of a year on average per kid. Now, that average doesn't tell the whole story.
No.
Like averages rarely do, because what happened during the pandemic, as many people pointed out, is that the disparities got worse. Many of my physician friends hired teachers who were not in schools to be private tutors for their kids and a few other kids. So these kids basically got, like, you know, parent teacher student ratios of, you know, 1 to 3, 3 to 1, yeah. 4 to 1. And low income kids obviously didn't have those kinds of opportunities. So that point, that half to 3/4 of a year average really says that some kids have nothing, and some kids have probably 1-2 year differences in their learning. The disparities have gotten worse. We should have narrowed those before. We need to double and triple down on doing that now.
Okay, 1, 2, and 3, first, second, third grade, low socioeconomic. What was the learning with remote teaching?
Well, you know, this was part of what we said before. I mean, I don't think any credible teacher, any credible parent believes that a first and second grader can learn anything meaningfully with remote learning unless there's a parent in the room helping to co-teach or reteach what's happening. I mean, look, in all fairness to teachers, the absolute best, most dynamic first and second grade teacher becomes the most boring TV show children have ever watched if she's on Zoom or he's on Zoom. It just that's not the way they were taught to teach. It's a very difficult thing to do, and children lose interest very quickly in watching a teacher over Zoom when they're that young. So I would say that without a parent in the room, they basically learn nothing. And what we also learned, again, was that many children didn't attend at all, didn't log in. As many as, in some school districts, as many as 50 to 70% of kids never logged in at all. Why? In many cases, they didn't have access to broadband. In many cases, they didn't have parents who were at home that could co-teach. Now, these children were given over to other caretakers, perhaps to big mamas or to other people to try to teach them, but they were not getting the benefits of in-person schooling. I mean, that's just a fact. This was not as good, and I don't think anyone believes it could be as good for primary school children.
1.3 million students have dropped out of public school during the pandemic. 9% in New York City have left the school system. So we're already seeing this happen. And we haven't even talked about depression.
Yep, well, I was going to say we're focusing a lot on the cognitive parts of the cognitive costs of this, which are real and measurable. But the mental health crisis as well is real, measurable, and we're at the early
parts. Across the country have been featuring coronavirus-related headlines since the pandemic began over a year ago. There's one common thread among all news outlets: negativity.
This tends to be the kind of thing that grabs views and attention. And so people, you know, it's about viewer engagement. And in the era of 24-hour news, this kind of negativity grabs people's attention and holds it.
we've got serious, serious problems here, academically, mentally, and emotionally. Did you want to say something, ma'am?
I'm Cheryl Cozy, and I'm a psychotherapist in private practice in Atlanta, Georgia. And one of the things that, we've been discussing is this issue on a macro level. But I deal with it on a micro level. Yep. I deal with the parents that come to me and say, hey, I'm not a teacher. I don't know anything about science. I don't know anything about math. But they've been thrust in a role of having to teach their children. The children are on the computer. You think that they're engaging in the lesson, but they're on social media being bullied. We're Monday morning quarterbacking, and we need to be prepared for the next crisis. And that's my concern, is that we're finger pointing and we're blaming this one and blaming that one. And, I recall the Obama administration did have a pandemic response program prepared, and I think it was tossed out by the following administration. But, my concern is going forward. How are we going to be able to prepare teachers to deal with the next crisis? How are we going to be able to prepare parents to deal with their adolescents? That's who I deal with mostly, is adolescents coming in who've had complete personality changes because of the pandemic, because of the social isolation. So, adolescents are already prone to be anxious anyway. And so when you compile a crisis such as this nature on top of that, you have a situation where we have to be prepared. We have to stop finger pointing. We have to say, how can we collectively come together as a society and prepare for the next crisis?
Well, let me respond to what you're saying, because you're speaking some down-to-earth, actionable truth. And not only was the preparedness plan thrown out, the 24 people that knew the most about how to execute were dismissed. So let's throw the plan out and get rid of everybody that knew anything about it. And that's a serious problem, and that has to be remediated as well. You want to say something before we go to break?
Yes. So my name is Christopher Cormier. I'm an associate professor in the School of Education at Loyola Marymount University. I think there's a few things that we're missing from this conversation. So I do agree with most of what folks have said today. But I think that one of the things is that when we think about who was impacted the most, we're often not talking about students with disabilities who were served in special education programs.
Absolutely.
When schools shut down, what happened was that their IEPs, they were pretty much getting nothing. And schools then started trying to scramble to make it happen where the IEPs would say that they would get remote instruction. So the local school districts did a horrible job with managing students with disabilities, and the federal government did not give great oversight. But one thing that I think that we're not having a discussion on is there were some benefits, though, and that were things. So I know that the topic today is on the mishandling of the pandemic, but if we continue to give this deficit narrative of teaching, then we wonder why people are not want to go in the classroom. And so on one hand, we can say that there were students that we realized that were bullied, that they found that being in a remote environment was a much better space for those students. We found that one thing that's often not talked about, teachers of color, who are often expected to take on certain roles in schools. You have a black man, he's expected to deal with all the behavior problems or perceived behavior problems. Your Latina teacher, you're expected to be the translator. That didn't happen in a remote environment. So the same racialized and toxic experiences that people of color have outside of schools are microcosm of society, and they were had in schools. So then if you're a teacher of color and you're going to a Zoom faculty meeting, you could just shut off, because you don't have to deal with all the chatter. But I think that the reality is that we just need to be careful with how we're framing this and not looking at it. On one hand, again, students with disabilities weren't served well. On the other hand, there were some positive things that came out of this. And lastly, I'll share that I think that one thing that is problematic is that so many people who are making these decisions, even some folks here, were not teachers. And so we're asking people, I was a teacher before becoming a professor. And so, but we're having people make decisions who were never in the classroom, who are giving these conversations and saying, oh, well, the unions are saying this or the unions are saying that. Well, at the end of the day, teaching is still a career. And even though it's a caring and compassionate field, as a teacher, I still have bills. And that I think that there is a misconception that teachers are supposed to give, and shouldn't receive anything, given that this is also a career that they should be getting some money for as well.
And when we talk about bringing kids back to school, it's like, how are we going to bring them back when we don't have the funding to take care of them in the ways that we need to take care of them? And so this whole thing should be transformational, right? This is an opportunity, I think, for us to be transformational in the way we do education. Because we're talking about the pandemic right now, we're talking about COVID, we're talking about students, and we're talking about what's happened in the past couple of years. But a lot of these issues that we're talking about were happening before.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yes.
And so there was this gap that's now exacerbated, right?
And they're going to
so how do we
continue
do
going
this?
forward. We got to take a break. When we come back, I have a question for Dr. Redfield. We'll be right back.
Children, as the pandemic has raged on, their mental health has continued to suffer. In a September survey, more than half of children ages 11 to 17 reported they had thoughts of suicide or self-harm, nearly half or every day in the previous 2 weeks. They were also more likely than any other age group to have moderate to severe symptoms of anxiety and depression.
Okay, we're back. Nothing really slowed down while we were gone, but we are back. And listen, we're talking about what's been going on for the last couple of years, and good points have been made that a lot of these issues were just exacerbated. Right. They weren't invented during the pandemic. It just really brought into sharp focus some of the flaws and fallacies in the education system. And those things just got really magnified during the pandemic. And I said I had a question for Dr. Redfield. We've already said, Dr. Redfield, that this pandemic's not over, correct?
Correct.
And Dr. Christakis, you and I were talking earlier before the show, as we come into winter, we could still see some spikes in this.
I expect we will. I mean, everyone would expect that, yeah.
And
Yes.
I'll ask you both, as physicians, are we likely in the near term, 2 to 5 years, to see another pandemic that is not necessarily just a derivative of this, but something that is independent but of a similar magnitude?
I think, Dr. Phill, that's why it's so important that we really do an honest reflection on how unprepared we still are. I mean, I think if you just watch the monkeypox experience, once again, and that was approached more like an academic exercise rather than a public health response exercise. And so now we are going to have monkeypox with us for the rest of time. I think there's no doubt that we're going to have another pandemic. And I actually, I call it the Great Pandemic. And I don't say this lightly. When I went to be CDC director, one of the reasons I did it, I felt called as a virologist, and I think our nation's at great threat for what I'll call a bird flu pandemic. And I think we still are at great risk for that, and we're very unprepared in many different ways, and we need to get prepared. I've always said on my congressional testimonies that I believe the national security of the United States is much more threatened by the next pandemic than it is China, Russia, North Korea, and Iran, and we ought to prepare for it proportionally. So I think we're at great risk. And the problem with the bird flu pandemic, in a way, we were gifted with COVID, although it's terrible. We've lost over 1 million people. When I was briefed originally in February 2020, CDC told me that they expected we'd have 2.2 million people dead by September 2020. Now, luckily, that didn't happen, but we still had, almost 200,000 people that lost their lives by then. But we're in for a great pandemic, and the bird flu pandemic's not going to have. It's going to have a much higher mortality rate, and it's not going to segregate between young and children and teenagers and young adults and midlife and old. It's going to have a mortality rate across the board. Whether that mortality rate's 5% or 10% or higher, it's going to be there, and that's why we have to be vigilant about getting prepared. So that we can confront this pandemic in a much more effective way than we confronted this.
And you say that right now that there's like funding to prepare for something like the pandemic, and you say it's maybe 20% of what it needs to be.
Yeah, I might even say even less. When I was CDC director, I went down, I had an original budget of a little over $5 billion. And I was arguing that CDC's budget should be closer to $25 billion, realizing that CDC provides most of the public health funding for Tennessee, California, all the states. Most of the money, if you look at what your state provides in public health funding, you'll find it actually comes from the federal government through CDC. So, and we don't have the manufacturing capability. Luckily, we've had a scientific breakthrough with the mRNA vaccines where we can make a vaccine now in 2 to 6 weeks, whereas before it would take us 6 to 12 months. But we don't have the manufacturing capability if we do develop that vaccine. There needs to be much more attention to developing what I call private-public partnerships for pandemic response, very similar to what we have in the Defense Department, where we have long-lasting private-public partnerships to make sure that they have the defense requirements that our nation needs. That's how serious this is. And, you know, I'm still hopeful that people will get serious about giving a proportional response. When I used to testify before Congress, I'd say, you know, I want you to give me 3 to 5 aircraft carriers. Now, I don't want aircraft carriers, but I wanted the funding equivalent to it. So this nation needs to be investing more like $25 to $50 billion in a year in its public health preparedness. If there's any real message here, we do have the capacity to get prepared. We are not prepared. And I ask people if they think this might be an overreaction, I ask them to read a book called The Great Influenza by John Barry. And it describes the influenza outbreak at the turn of the century. And you see what happened. Yeah. And don't kid yourself, that could happen again. Bird flu is going to have a mortality rate that is going to really have the potential to cause societal disharmony. When children start dying and teenagers start dying and, you know, adults in their 20s and 30s and 40s start dying, it's going to be very disruptive.
Gotcha.
Yeah, you know, I think the appropriate analogy is sort of to climate change, where we talk about we're all familiar now with the 1 in 200 year flood and the 1 in 300 year snowstorm, and we're having those more and more frequently. And this is a 1 in a 100 year pandemic, but I don't think it's going to be 100 years before we have another one. I think for a lot of global reasons, we are positioning ourselves to have another pandemic later. I want to piggyback on one thing that Dr. Redfield said, though, is that we need to apply the lessons, and those lessons include taking politics out of this, because the politics are even impeding us from learning those lessons. I think we've gotten some clue to that even here. I just think we have to have a better, more reasoned response that is politics agnostic.
Well, and I think it starts with A, being honest, and 2, like putting the children first here. And right now, it's going to start with more time in school, and that takes more money to close this gap, right?
Yes.
And that's going to take a lot of money, and it's going to have more time in school. Final comment, and we have to go.
Dr. Phill, I want you to know that it's really important that we go at this differently. The government has now put a ton of money into schools, but that money ends in 2025. So all of us who are superintendents are worried, because if we make systemic changes, but then don't have any money in 2025, it's going to be over. And we can't go back to having to say, oh, well, the teachers have to be responsible for the mental health crisis of the kids. Oh, well, the teachers have to make sure that the kids are vaccinated. We need to have health professionals. We need to have mental health professionals, especially on our campuses. And that means major systemic changes in our schools. It can't be this short-term thinking.
My point is, right now, we have a group of children that are suffering a deficit, and we've got to help them close the deficit, or they're going to suffer, the country's going to suffer, and everybody needs to put their political agenda down and focus on these kids. They deserve it, and we can do it, or we can beat our political drum. It's just a matter of being honest and focusing on the kids. I want to thank all of my guests today. A very special thanks to you, Dr. Christakis. Thank you so much. Pediatrician, researcher, author, and the doctor behind Panda Crate Education Toys. You'll want your little one to have. For more information about today's episode, or if you'd like to share log on to drphill.com. You'll see information there from Dr. Redfield as well. Really everyone that has talked here. And if you want to add your voice to the conversation, you can find me on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. I know you're going to have a lot to say about this. Please do. We need to pay attention to this and be engaged. And if you're in the Los Angeles area or you plan to be, we'd love to have you join us right here on stage. Just go to drphill.com, click on Be Part of the Audience for all the details. And don't forget to follow and subscribe to my podcast, Fill in the Blanks, where I talk about a lot of these kinds of things. Dr. Kostakis has been on, and we've talked about these things before. It's interesting that it was a long time ago we were talking about these very things that are sadly coming true. Also listen to Robin's podcast, I've Got a Secret. She talks to some real thought leaders and the secrets behind their success. You can find them both on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to podcasts. Now, we've talked a lot about the mental health of our children these last few days. And so before I go, I want to direct you to an article just published in USA Today titled, "Why Can't We Be Friends? Lack of Social Contact Harms American Mental Physical Health." It's an important read written by none other than yours truly and the brilliant Dr. John White from WebMD. Especially during the holiday season, it's so very important to connect with one another. And when I say connect, I mean not on social media. Clicks aren't connections. So put down your phones, look one another in the eye, and have a real conversation. You'll be amazed at how these real-world connections can help. And we wrote this because there's so much research right now about the fact that when people grow up, friends just kind of fall out of their life. And that tends to lead to loneliness, which tends to lead to depression, which tends to lead to a shortened lifespan and advanced disease. So it's really important that we not live our lives virtually, that we connect with people in the real world and nurture those friendships. And Robin and I would like to wish everyone a happy, stress-free holiday. We'll see you next time. Doctor?
Dr. Phill. Is her fiance trying to control her?
Did you say she couldn't even tell her family she was pregnant?
Yes. Or protect her?
Is she only allowed to discuss the weather?
Wow.
What are you so exasperated about?
I feel like I'm going to war with a butter knife right now.
You're ranting and raving. You can barely breathe. You're so upset. You come across like a Tasmanian devil.
I'm not even allowed to be mad at her.
Well, you're blowing that restriction. Let's do it.
Have a good show, everybody. Here we go.
I hate to see people suffering, and you've hurt long enough.
Stand by, Dr. Phill.
Roll Tiffany. Take
I'm going to get you the help that you need.
In 5, 4.
This is going to be a changing day in your life. All right, now, everybody here, you guys have heard the term laundry list, right? Well, my first guest, Lawrence, takes that literally. Here's his list. Put the soap in and let the water fill. Close the lid and let it swish around a little bit. Then put the laundry in. Now, he did not create this list of rules for himself. They are guidelines for his bride-to-be. His possible bride-to-be. And those are just the beginning. Tiffany says Lawrence has other lists and rules, including putting a lock on their bedroom door to keep her out when he was not home, not allowing her to have a cell phone, and only letting her talk to her father about such things as current events and weather.
Lawrence is my fiance. We have a 7-year-old son together. I first realized how incredibly controlling Lawrence was when we first moved in together. He controlled pretty much everything I did. Where I slept, when I ate, he tried to control how I looked. He would only give me prepaid phones, and when the time was up, he wouldn't put new money on it. I did not have my own cell phone for a long time. My family had to call Lawrence's phone to talk to me. Lawrence controls what I talk about with my friends and family. I'm only supposed to talk about the weather and current events, not personal details. When I was pregnant with our second child, Lawrence did not want me to tell my father or my mother. He didn't want me to tell anybody. I respected his wishes until I was about 5 months. When he would leave the house, he would lock our bedroom door, and I had no key. He didn't want me snooping around. He's the most controlling person I've ever known.
Okay, it's good to meet you. I have an email here that you sent to me.
Yes.
Here's an excerpt. Please help. I have been in a relationship for 7 years with a man that hates my family. I went 3 years without talking to my mom and kept the birth of our second son a secret. I want out, but I don't know how. Help, please. So that's a serious email that I take serious. Are you serious?
I am serious. I love him, and I want to make it work, but I can't live like this anymore.
Now, he doesn't see it the way you do.
I know that.
You understand? We're going to hear from him. Lawrence insists he's not controlling his fiancée, Tiffany, but simply setting boundaries. Take a look at this.
I have Tiffany's best interest at heart. She feels that I'm the one who is controlling. However, if I've been controlling, it was only to protect my family. There was a few months where I had a lock on the door, but we weren't even together. I felt it was necessary to protect my privacy. I had bought the phone for Tiffany. It took not even a week for her parents to give out that number to the very people that I was trying to protect her from. She has never come to me with any of these issues, ever. Now suddenly I'm the bad guy. Really, it's her parents that are the problem. Her father is a sick and manipulative, egotistical maniac. Whenever we are in family situations, he uses her and be like, you know, look at me, I'm a great father. Tell them, Tiffany, tell them I'm a great father. She does it. She feeds it. I've made several attempts to fix her lives. I wake up every day.
Nobody's asking you to fix our lives.
She has people in her life, including myself, that truly love her, but seems to only enable and validate the people who have been destructive. The unfortunate thing is that nobody really sees what is really going on.
Well, Lawrence also wrote an email just one day after his fiancée, Tiffany, contacted the show. Here's an excerpt from that. My father-in-law has been ruining our lives and controlling and manipulating Tiffany to feed his ego and regain his control over the family. I'm getting the sense this is painful for you already.
First thing, as far as the laundry list, she would literally fill a load of laundry and put soap on top of it. When it ran through, the clothes would still be dry on top. And so I'd literally, agitate the soap. I feel like I've been a parent to her because nobody was there to teach her even how to do laundry.
Has it gone beyond how to do laundry?
Yeah, like I told our first counselor, I've never met somebody as, somewhat ignorant to everyday ways of life. And, her parents are largely blamed for why she has problems functioning.
You seem really agitated.
Sorry.
No, it's okay. I'm just wondering if you know that you're really agitated.
I was doing fine until I saw the initial clip, and I thought, yeah.
We thought we were going to come on here and it was going to be all about me and what I do wrong in my family and not about him.
Maybe. You don't know yet. I said I got issues with you.
I know. I have issues. I know that I do. And I want to work on them, but it almost seems impossible when he's constantly pushing me down.
Basically, what this boils down to is you're just trying to protect her from herself.
I would say that. She has literally been self-destructive.
You don't want to control her. You're just trying to keep her from self-destructing or being with terrible people like her family.
I've reached out. It's not her family. There's a few members of her family, and I've reached out to the healthy members. And from day one, I've reached out. Everybody's ignored me. They won't validate me or they won't listen to me from day one.
Here's what she says Lauren's controlling behavior consists of. And this is just according to her. Let's go through it, and then I'll let you comment. Because I think if you comment on each one, we're going to be here at Thanksgiving. Okay. She says she's not allowed to see her mom for 3 years, not allowed to see her brother until he breaks up with his girlfriend because you don't like him. No relationship with niece because you don't like her mom. Not allowed to tell family she was pregnant for 6 months. Only allowed to discuss current events and weather with friends and family. Not allowed to give family the home address for 4 years. They couldn't know where she was living. Grandfather not allowed to take pictures of the grandchildren. Not allowed to tell family where he works or what time he gets off. No key to the first apartment. Left home without a car or phone. Gave Tiffany a prepaid cell phone, but then wouldn't reload the minutes. Not on the mortgage of the house. Checks miles on car to see how far Tiffany has gone. Must approve clothes before buying them. Not allowed to wear hair in a ponytail. Upset Tiffany's mom, called her on her birthday, said family doesn't need to call when we are together. Controls money, does all grocery shopping and pays bills. Annoyed Tiffany calls the dog Rock and not Rocky. Now that's her list. We just asked her what her perceptions were. That was her list.
Absolutely, man. This is, I have to say, first of all, that the first year of our relationship was so dysfunctional, and it sickens me to this day.
Let's take a quick break, and you take a quick breath. We're going to find out what question our producer asked Lawrence during the field shoot that pushed him over the edge. We'll come right back.
This is pretty shocking.
So what are you so exasperated about now?
I feel like I'm going to war with a butter knife right now. This control thing is two ways.
And later, here's the email she wrote me. Please help.
This looks very bad on my part. I am not even going to deny that.
You come across like a Tasmanian devil. It's like, wow, I can't believe it, oh my God.
Lawrence has told me that I'm not allowed to be friends with certain people. He's got a list of people that I'm not supposed to contact.
I didn't give her a list. There was an understanding.
People from my past.
There was a couple people that I did not want in Tiffany's life, and it was for significant reasons.
My best friend, my mother, and even my father. I don't know why he feels that way. He can't accept the fact that I made decisions in my past that weren't the best, and he wants to blame other people for it. This is another example of how he wants to control everything.
Well, Tiffany says her fiance of 3.5 years, Lawrence, completely alienates her from family and friends and even has a list titled Not Allowed to Be Your Friend list.
Are you kidding?
Of people she cannot talk to. But Lawrence says, look, he is not the problem. He is just trying to protect Tiffany from people who he claims were in her life before and hurt her and used her and exploited her. He's just trying to get those people out of her life and take care of her. Take a look.
Lawrence has alienated me from my family. He wants certain family members completely out of my life. He feels like my family controls me. My dad and Lawrence don't get along. Lawrence does not want my father to come to our house. It's absolutely ridiculous.
Doug is extremely controlling of Tiffany and our lives. Tiffany's 28 years old, and her father will not let go of Tiffany.
I think that my father and Lawrence are a lot alike in many ways, and I think that's what upsets Lawrence.
What do you want?
I want to be able to see my family without getting in trouble by you. Lawrence does not want me to talk to my family. I think he's afraid of losing control over me. I didn't speak to my mother for so long that she actually called the police to do a welfare check on me. Lawrence has forbidden me from talking to my brother's girlfriend, which means I can't see my brother and I can't even meet my niece. I miss her and I miss my brother. I would like to share things with my family, but I feel like if I do, I'm betraying Lawrence.
Okay, let me ask you a few questions. Forget about her for a second, just about you. Are you, in fact, controlling and dictating to her who she can have in her life and who she can't?
There's a couple people, yes.
So that, yes. Did you, in fact, say she couldn't even tell her family she was pregnant?
Yes.
Okay.
With one person, with one parent, I believe, and it was very sick
Is she only allowed to discuss the weather and current events with her family? Nothing about the family?
No, that's not true.
You've never said that to me?
I've suggested the fact that your dad controls you, gets personal information out of us while feeding you lies, and I don't understand why you repeatedly, repulsively. Why can't you guys talk about the weather? I mean, people say that I'm controlling. Seriously, even to this day, I'm not even allowed to be mad at her. I'm not even allowed to have feelings of anger because she immediately goes on the offensive, and that's been...
Well, you're blowing that restriction.
Right?
Right? You can barely breathe. You're so upset. Oh, wow. All right. Well, Lawrence lost his temper during our field shoot when we asked about some of these controlling behaviors towards Tiffany.
Is it fair to say that you're not the controlling one, her family's the one with the controllers?
Yes, there's... Well, it's not her family, it's her parents. I'm fighting for the family. There's many good members of her family.
Sure.
I'm fighting for them, I'm fighting for my son, I'm fighting for Tiffany, I'm fighting for her future. Yeah. I don't know. Only person that... Tiffany doesn't know any better. She didn't know any better then, man. She didn't know any better. And how the did they get her phone number a week after I bought her that phone? And why did Tiffany go a week and a half with these destructive people behind my back? And who the gave her the number? I still don't know who gave them the number. It was obviously her parents. Only few people that we trusted had her number. Somebody that we trusted betrayed us, and Tiffany betrayed me. Dude. Yeah.
Well, here's the question that seemed to set Lawrence off. Quote, is it fair to say that you're not the controlling one, it's her family that has control issues?
Man. Whew. I guess. This is pretty shocking.
So what are you so exasperated about now?
Not differently. There's a lot more to this puzzle. I feel like I'm going to war with a butter knife right now. The situation that I came into.
Let me focus on me for a minute.
Yes,
okay?
sir.
Here's what I believe your position is. I got in a relationship with this girl and quickly discovered that she is a product of an incredibly dysfunctional history. And as a result, my job as a fiance and her future husband and the father of our child is to protect her from all of these people that have exploited her and put her in harm's way and used her and abused her. And so, by God, I'm going to stand in the gap and protect her, and that's my job, and that's all I'm trying to do, and if you want to criticize me for it, then go ahead. Is that kind of your position?
Yes.
How am I doing?
Good. And I've
do I get it? Did I do my homework?
And, and the thing about it is that, I've just waited for something, for her to stand up for something other than to protect protect and enable, these destructive people and to...
Right. Well, we're going to talk about that with her in just a minute, but...
This control thing is two ways, man, and...
Yeah, well, we're going to talk about that. Lawrence says he did write a 15-page letter airing his grievances about his future father-in-law, Doug. We're going to find out what the letter says and why it pushed Tiffany over the edge. We'll come back.
I wrote a letter to her grandma without Tiffany knowing, to let the family know what her father has been doing, who he is, how he has been hurting Tiffany. It was time for people to know what is going on in their lives.
And later...
Every move I make is wrong. Everything I say is wrong.
You are allowing this man to dictate your life to you.
I want him to stop. I want to be able to breathe.
Lawrence wants her family completely out of her life. We've had a few arguments before. I've come close many times to jump in my truck, drive down there, and put a good beating on him.
Well, that was Doug talking about his frustration with the way his future son-in-law treats his daughter. Now, Lawrence says he is determined to show Tiffany's family that he is right about not wanting Tiffany to be around certain people in her life. He wants to keep her away from those he thinks have and will hurt her. So he spent about a month writing a 15-page letter about how Doug manipulates and controls his daughter. Take a look.
Tiffany's not saying anything, doing anything to fix our lives. I wrote a letter to her grandma without Tiffany knowing, to let the family know what her father has been doing, who he is, how he has been hurting Tiffany. It was time for people to know what is going on in their lives. It was time for me and Tiffany to move forward without running from everything that she does not want people to know. It was 15 pages long, and it was brutal, and it was the truth. I'm writing you about Doug and his control, manipulation, and ego that is destroying the people around him, mainly Tiffany and I. It is becoming crystal clear that Doug is a sick and desperate man, desperate to regain his power and place within Debbie's family that he lost because of some issues in his life. It is also clear that we are not allowed to move forward in our life without him standing in our way and his ego being in control. That. It was so disturbing and sickening to see how manipulated and controlled by her father she really was. I put it on my dead son's soul that everything I said was the truth. I can no longer continue to enable horrible people my wife enables out of anxiety, out of misplaced loyalty. That's what it comes down to. It's misplaced loyalty.
Okay, so that's the letter. Those are excerpts from the letter. I have the 15-page handwritten, margin-to-margin, top-to-bottom letter here. And it's obvious that you put a lot of thought into this.
Yes, sir.
If I read this right, the upshoot here is all of you family members need to understand that Doug is one sick guy.
You know, and
that he is manipulative and controlling and is going to hurt her, and you wanted them to know that. Now, Liz is the one that Lawrence has described as being the one with her feet on the ground, the matriarch of the family. It was the one that he chose to present his 15-page diatribe to. But she did not respond to it the way that he wanted to. Liz is on the phone. Liz, you say you think this is an unhealthy relationship that she's in. Why do you think that?
Because I don't think she has room to grow. I don't think she can be the whole person she has the potential to be. When she left him for 6 weeks, she went to the community college, she studied, and she got her GED, which she hadn't been able to do in 7 years living with him. You know, when she's off from under his thumb, she does blossom and she does things. I don't think that it's that he doesn't love her. I just don't think he knows how to let her live and be a whole person.
Is there dysfunction in her history and her family history?
Well, certainly we're not perfect, and my daughter and my son-in-law are divorced.
Okay, we're going to talk to Tiffany's father, Doug. We're going to find out why his future son-in-law's behavior made him think he was in the witness protection program. And we are going to hear from Tiffany what she thinks, what she wants, and why. We'll be right back.
Lawrence is unhinged. He won't look me in the eye. Lawrence does have a temper, and he does own a handgun, and has made me nervous for my daughter and my grandson's safety.
And later,
I was under a different understanding about this show topic from the producers, and I...
Oh, whoa, 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 whoa. Okay, bring him out. What do you want?
I want to try and make this work. I want him to stop. I want to be able to breathe. I want to be able to go see my family without feeling like I'm betraying him.
Okay, you've had this relationship for 7 years.
Yes.
Okay, you have a child together. And I'm curious why in the world you are allowing this man or any woman, anybody to dictate your life to you. Why are you doing that?
I don't
No, that's not an answer. What do you mean you don't know? You've had 7 years to think about this before you walked out here and sat down with me.
I guess in a way, I feel like I need it. I don't know how to do it on my own.
You don't know how to do what?
Be who I am. I don't know who I am anymore. It's been so long that I don't know who I am. I don't know if I could do it without Lawrence. It terrifies me, the fact that if I left him, I would be on my own.
The fact that you think you can't do it without Lawrence terrifies me. That terrifies me because that tells me that your self-esteem, your self-worth, your self-confidence has been eroded to the point that you have no confidence in your ability to function in this world without somebody else helping you.
I want to be with him. I love him. He is a good man. He's a good father. There are good things about him. When it's good, it's good. But when it's bad, it's really bad.
You know, the number one tool of an abuser is isolation. Because if they cut their victim off from the world, from friends and family and clergy and just others, then they have the ability to start influencing and controlling. But if that person goes out and has lunch with a friend who says, well, my husband doesn't do that, and that's not healthy, that's not right, it could cause you to question it, and that disrupts the control of a controller when they get input from the outside. You're isolated. I went down and made a list. No car, that's isolation. Approving purchases, that's controlling you with money, that's isolation. No family contact, isolation. No contact with this friend, isolation. You can't tell anybody that you're pregnant. That's isolation.
Yes, one person was her mother.
So how's this working for you as far as your peace of mind, your happiness, your self-worth and esteem? How's this working for you?
Not very well. My self-worth and esteem is gone.
So if 10 is, man, I can stand up and conquer the world, and 1 is, I'm scared to death of the world if somebody's not there to protect me, where would you put yourself?
Probably a 2 or a 3.
And if 10 is a wonderful, loving partnership of a relationship with mutual respect, and 1 is a parent-child situation where you don't really get to make choices, where would you put your relationship?
Probably a 2 or a 3.
How about you? Where would you put this relationship in terms of on a 1 to 10 scale?
Lately, I would say it's a 9. Since we got back together, we have everything except for communication. No. You have everything. No, I'm saying we rub each other's feet. She has, we literally, she will grab my shirt and kiss me. I'm saying we have passion and intimacy and love and, it hasn't been that long, but.
Okay, did you just hear her say it's a 2 or a 3?
Yeah.
See, the quality of a relationship is a function of how well it meets the needs of the two people involved. So if your needs are being met, you could rate it a 9. Listen, if your needs are being met, you could rate it a 9. If hers are not, she could rate it a 2. That's how you could be a 9 and she could be a 2, because your needs are getting met and her needs are not. You understand that?
And apparently I'm the only one that thought that we were having a healthy relationship. I mean, man, this is really...
This is really what?
Hard.
Here's the email she wrote me. Please help.
Oh, wow, everybody's laughing. This is good stuff, I guess.
You know why everybody's laughing? And that's their way of saying, oh my God. Here's the email she wrote me. Please help. Help. Please help. I've been in a relationship for 7 years with a man that hates my family. He goes into a rage about how I have the worst parents ever. I spent 3 years without even talking to my mother and kept the birth of our son a secret. I want out, but I don't know how. Help, please. Signed, Tiffany.
And the first time I found out about that, and I thought she was actually seeking help for the dysfunction on her side of the family, and I'm not perfect.
Yes, see?
Oh, wow.
The issues.
So you were just the bus driver?
Wow.
You were just going to drop her off?
No, I'm saying,
That's exactly how our counseling started, too. When we started group counseling, we went, and it was about fixing me.
Oh, my gosh. Wow.
Why do you think these guys are laughing?
Because I was under a different understanding about this show topic from the producers, and I...
Whoa. Okay, bring them out. Listen, you don't run that by me. I got the best staff in the history of television, and if you think for a second you're going to run that crap by me, that my producers call bait and switch on you, bring them out. Bring them out. We're going to find out whether you're telling the truth or trying to manipulate me, because...
I would never do that, Dr.
Yeah,
Phill.
no, you would try.
No, I wouldn't.
But
I'm here for help.
Well, I'm calling that bluff. All right, this is Jesse, who's the Phill person. Was there any confusion about what we were here for?
Not to me.
What was the understanding about what this show is about?
A controlling relationship between people who are apparently thinking about getting married, but whether the control issues lie more with the fiancé or with the family of Tiffany's family.
All right, and Amy Jo, step forward if you will. This is the senior producer. What was this show about from the beginning?
It was about controlling fiancés and whether or not you should move forward and get married if you are in that type of relationship.
Okay, was there any subterfuge about that at all?
No, not from the beginning. Everything was very clear. Every question we asked was about that particular topic.
Okay, so what part of this did you not understand? You said that, oh, wow, these guys, they misled me. Well, here's the two people right here.
Well, where's Christy?
Christy's right here.
Right here.
I said from the beginning that the show was going to be about your and Tiffany's relationships and the issue that you were having in particular with Doug.
Does it really matter? Don't we need help?
Yes, Tiffany, we need help big time.
Then let's do this.
Well, thank you, Christy, Jesse, Amy Jo. I hate to digress, but when somebody accuses my staff of lying, I'll just trot them out and let them stand for themselves.
I didn't mean lying. I mean failure to communicate what I thought was going on here. Whew. Oh wow, everybody's laughing. This is good stuff.
You know why everybody's laughing? They're laughing because the outrageousness of your lack of insight and willingness to look at theirself. They're laughing. That's their way of saying, oh my God, this guy needs to calm down and recognize what's going on. They're not being disrespectful. This is exasperation on their part.
I just want her to make healthy decisions. I mean,
Well, the first way, let me tell you how you can help yourself. The first thing you can do is stop playing the victim, because it doesn't work with me anyway. You're like, oh, wow, look what's happening to me. I came here because she is from such a dysfunctional family, and all of the focus is on me. I can't imagine why it's on you, other than the fact that you're ranting and raving and hyperventilating and pounding your fist and just being completely irrational. You have some legitimate concerns that I share with you.
Thank you.
But the manner in which you are going about implementing what you consider to be protection
I agree.
is not working, is it?
I agree.
She is so exasperated with you that she says she wants out. But she really doesn't. She just wants out from under the pressure. Because
pressure of letting the truth be known. I mean,
the pressure of not being good enough for you, feeling like I can't even move. Every move I make is wrong. Everything I say is wrong.
My daughter is in a toxic relationship. Lawrence is a nut. That boy seems to think that he is like Captain America and he's the only one that's out there protecting the universe from the bad people. My daughter is in a toxic relationship. Lawrence wants to control her every move. He's verbally abusive. He's mentally abusive. Lawrence is a nut. That boy seems to think that he is like Captain America and he's the only one that's out there protecting the universe from the bad people. And I'm one of the bad people. For many years, Lawrence would forbid Tiffany from letting anyone know where they're actually living. You would have to call Lawrence, and Lawrence would have to decide whether or not he's going to let you talk to her. So sometimes I would go 6 months without talking to her. And now I'm not allowed to visit my daughter or grandson at their own home. It's ridiculous. I'm a grown man, and I'll sit in my car a block away waiting to see his car leave so I can sneak in there and see my daughter and my grandson. Lawrence is unhinged. He won't look me in the eye. He will not come to my house. He will not talk to me. He avoids me at every turn. Lawrence does have a temper, and he does own a handgun, and has made me nervous for my daughter and my grandson's safety.
Okay, now, Doug was going to be on the phone. We told him when the show was. We told him what time it was, and he said, good, I'll do it. Then this morning, he said, well, I'm too busy. Which kind of goes
His way. I know.
Lawrence's point of view.
Thank you. I mean,
I know.
This looks very bad on my part. I understand it. I am not even going to deny that. But I have fought for Tiffany to make healthy decisions for herself, for us.
This has turned into a parent-child relationship. You don't want to be daddy.
I want a healthy partner. I've never had that.
No, you've never had that, and you don't have it now. So what needs to happen here is you need to, number one, get some stress management skills. Because if you don't, you're just going to blow up. Okay? Listen to me.
I know. I am.
No, look at me.
I am over.
You come across like a Tasmanian devil. It's like, oh, wow, I can't believe it. Oh, my God. And that's not effective. You two need to negotiate a way that you can relax. You need to learn some of the things that he wants for you but is going about in the wrong way. So what I am going to suggest is that I arrange some very specialized counseling in 3 different ways. One, for you to get yourself under control so you're not so expansive and aggressive in your presentation.
Yeah.
And you, as a woman, to deal with some women's issues and find your place in this world, and then the 2 of you as a couple. Now, if I arrange and provide those things for you, will you do that?
Absolutely.
If I do that, will you do it?
Yes, 100%.
Okay, deal? All right. All right. It's going to get so much better you won't believe it. All right, next, some past guests have a special message for, actually, my wife, Robin. We'll be right back. Well, as you might know, my wife Robin is incredibly passionate about helping victims of domestic violence. She has been an integral part of this show since the beginning, and so many women have written in thanking Robin for inspiring them to make positive changes in their lives. You haven't seen this. Take a look.
Taking care of yourself is not selfish. It's essential.
Robin is the connector, is the great connector.
He cannot hurt you out there. This is your chance. A lot of these boys are doing what they learn, what they live, and we want to stop it before it gets started. At 6 years old, your son will remember what is going on for the rest of his life. You had just broken up with your boyfriend,
Yes,
correct?
I had left him, yes, and told him it was over.
Safety first.
Hi, Robin. I wanted to express my gratitude for having me on the show and giving me the opportunity to share my story. Robin's genuine passion for helping others is contagious. Since the show, I've been inspired to take my negative experience and turn it into something positive. Thank you so much for all you're doing, and keep up the good work.
Robin, I would like to express my gratitude to you for your continued support to build a global platform to educate the public and help victims of domestic violence.
If a child came up and smacked you in the face, would you smack them back? Because you control your reaction. And there's no reason why you shouldn't control your reaction with her.
I would like to thank Dr. Phill and Robin for providing a platform for me to show my face for the first time. And more importantly, Robin's charity allowed me to pay for my first semester back in college.
I'm so happy you're here. Thank you.
Is this man going to kill you?
Yes, he said he will.
You're protected every second up there. You're protected.
She lies.
You don't deserve me.
Robin, how'd she do?
Oh, she just did a beautiful job. I teared up. I was just so proud of you.
When I came here to the set, I spoke to Robin.
Say exactly what you want to say to him.
And remember your words to this day. Don't falter. This is your time. So I thank you for everything inside.
Making a difference. Well, thank you. Well, just this season, Robin formed a foundation to help women and children affected by domestic violence, and it is called When Georgia Smiled.
I named the foundation after my mother because when I was growing up, my father was a wonderful man. I loved my father dearly, but he was an alcoholic and a compulsive gambler. And every day of my life growing up felt very out of control. I felt I just had a life of uncertainty. And I know that because of that, my mother had to feel very overwhelmed. And she never really put herself first. She never took care of herself because she was always thinking of us. And by that, she was always smiling. She always had a smile on her face. And that smile brought so much peace and such a feeling of safety to my life. And it was because of her smile that I named the foundation in her honor. My hope is to help women and children that are victims of domestic violence to live healthy, safe, and joy-filled lives.
Now, Robin launched When Georgia Smiled with two very important life-changing programs called the Aspire Initiative and the Aspire app.
We truly believe both of these initiatives are potentially life-saving and can be found at whengeorgiasmiled.org.
They are designed to educate women and young teens about domestic violence as well as preventing it before it ever starts.
We want these programs to reach as many people as possible, so they are free.
And Robin's foundation is just the beginning. For the past 3 years, she has also been tirelessly working on a purpose-driven lifestyle brand called Robin McGraw Revelation, which she launched with a skincare line just last week.
Yes.
I'm very excited about that for you.
Thank you, that's right. I am so proud of that. And to celebrate my launch, I have also created a lip gloss collection called Avery Lasting Love, which I'm so proud to say I named that after our granddaughter, Avery. We love her. And the first color being released in the line is named after Erica, our daughter-in-law, Jay's wife, and Avery's mother. So precious. And it's called The Erica.
And let me tell you why this is such a huge deal. 100% of the net profits from Robin's lip gloss line are being donated to When Georgia Smiled, which will directly help women and children who are victims of domestic violence. So it's such a worthy cause, and you can pitch in to help in this cause in so many ways. Log on to robinmcgrawrevelation.com. You can do that right now to learn more about Robin's skincare line and how her lip gloss will go to help women and children in need.
And everyone is going home today with the Robin McGraw 30-day skincare kit. And every one of you get one of my Avery Lasting Love lip gloss.
All right. Good job. Thanks so much for being here.
Today on an all-new Dr. Phill.
I kept a secret from my wife and my congregation.
A pastor's fall from grace.
I was using heroin and meth every day.
You preached high. You used drugs in your children's bathroom.
A wife's struggle to heal.
Tell him the truth.
The kids and I didn't deserve this. He hurt me.
And an Olympian's painful confession.
You did take performance-enhancing drugs.
That's correct.
So you lied. This is going to be a changing day in your life.
Have a good show, everybody. Here we go.
It matters to you. That's what I want to talk about. Are we ready in the booth? Let's do it. Go, Dr. Phill. Well, as much as we hate to admit it, we've all told a lie at one point or another. True? Yes. Don't lie now. But what if you told one big lie and you constantly lived in fear that everybody would find out? The public might perceive you as someone who has it all, but deep down inside, you knew you were living a lie. Now, my first guest, Kim, is still reeling from the devastating truth her pastor husband, Brian, has been keeping.
From the outside looking in, people think we live the perfect life, 5 healthy, wonderful children. Brian being in the ministry and a pastor, when in reality, it was all a lie.
I kept a secret from my wife and my family and my congregation. I was addicted to pain pills for 8 years. A year and a half ago, I switched to heroin and meth.
I never thought anything like this could ever happen to me in my life.
I felt like a hypocrite because everyone viewed me as a man of God. I was using heroin and meth every day, at least 4 or 5 times a day.
I knew that he was taking pain medication for a back problem. I just assumed that it wasn't an issue anymore.
This is the main bathroom that I used to come into to use. I would turn the shower on. I would just sit down here, I'd put everything out on the ground, and I would do my thing. This right here is my toolbox. I would hide drugs in there. I could put anything I wanted in here, and nobody would know it was here. In the morning, I would get in my truck. I normally would keep everything up here. The first thing I would do would be to find a spot to park. I would start to use my drugs. Then I would lay back and kind of let the initial effect wear off, and then I would head off to work. I felt like a fraud when I would preach sermons on medication. I counseled people when I was using heroin or meth.
2 months ago, Brian was texting someone very strangely over and over, and he said that I wasn't allowed to look at his phone. I knew that he was lying to me about something.
I thought to myself, what normal person does this? My priorities were so messed up, and I thought I have to have help.
He then told me the extent of his addiction. He brought out all of the drugs and the different paraphernalia that he had, and he admitted everything. I was looking at a stranger. For the first time, I saw an addict, and that was very hard to absorb. I don't believe anybody in ministry has any idea what was going on with Brian. No one knows. I think when people find out, they're going to be extremely shocked.
I checked myself into rehab.
It was some of the darkest days in my life.
My life's harder now than it was before I went into rehab. It's like walking on a tightrope. There is no room for mistake, and if I slip up, it's over.
I feel like the last 10 years of my life have been a lie. I have a hard time trusting Brian. If he does use again, I can't stay.
So where are you with this now? And what is your hope? What do you want to see happen?
I really want restoration for my family. He knows that if he uses again, I won't stay. For now, if he's willing to fight and stay clean, then I will stay for our children, for myself. For him, I love him. But it's hard to realize how many years have gone by that there were lies. And
what is your question for me?
I just don't know where to begin the healing process. You know, I've carried the weight of my family for years, not really knowing, but now looking back, I realize that. I haven't had time to grieve or absorb my reality, because what I knew as my reality wasn't real. So how do I move on? You know, I have consequence from the addiction to pick up. Our business, financial, our children, our marriage. I have to get to know him again, because I don't really even know him.
Where do you come down in all of this now? What do you want to see happen? What's your question for me?
I want to see my family restored. I want to fight this thing with everything I have, and I know that for years I've been managing all of my feelings and emotions, whether good or bad. I've been medicating, and that's how I've managed for this amount of time. And now I'm in a position where I have nothing to manage those feelings with, and I'm scared to death that I will lose everything because of it.
You understand there's been tremendous collateral damage just beyond the drugs, because with the drugs, particularly in the fact that you were in the ministry and that you were looked on as a spiritual leader and a guide, and I'm sure counseled parishioners, I'm sure, about drugs and kids and things across the years. That's the problem with drugs, particularly in your role. There's a lot of deception that goes with it. I mean, you use drugs in your children's bathroom.
Yeah.
Upstairs in the house, and you lied about that, right? You took a family out to dinner, and you thought, we're all out to dinner. You know, we're all sitting down here having a nice dinner, and he's going in the bathroom and getting high.
Yes.
Right, and so now you look back on that and say, I can't even trust that. That time that we had as a family having dinner, he was actually going in the bathroom and getting high.
Yes.
So that's the sense of betrayal that you feel.
Of course.
You preached high.
On pain medication. Yeah.
You counsel people high. And the community knows nothing about this until this show airs.
Absolutely.
Right.
So people are going to
be very shocked, because we look like the perfect family. I mean, our kids, we have 5 healthy children, what I thought was a really good marriage. We appear to have it all together, but I think a lot of us do that. We wear a mask every day. We act like everything is okay.
Why choose this particular forum to do this?
Because it is happening everywhere. And it's happening to your neighbor in the suburbs, and people don't realize it, and no one's talking about it. When I thought of a heroin addict, I've never been in this drug world. I thought of somebody with scars on their face, no teeth. It wasn't the picture of a pastor. And that's the misconception that people are having.
So you're wanting to use this situation
absolutely
to raise awareness with people that this happens in suburbia. It can happen anywhere.
Yes.
Any walk of life, anywhere. Okay. All right, next, what Kim and Brian's 15-year-old daughter now thinks about her stepfather. We'll be right back.
I never thought this could happen to somebody in my family. I was really shocked.
Julia had to be that person I could lean on.
It's really hard to see my mom like that because, you know, you just can't fix everything.
Monday on an all-new Dr. Phill. They've dated for over 3 years.
I want to see a ring on my finger or goodbye.
He says he's not ready.
I've been burned. I do not want it to happen again.
Will he commit or quit?
You need to make up your mind.
You gonna marry this girl?
And a wedding shocker.
You found out you married somebody that was still married.
With an unbelievable twist.
Are you still intimate with him?
That's Monday.
Before I found out about Brian's drug addiction, I had a miscarriage. I almost died. And, you know, there were questions. Did I lose the baby because of the addiction? And that was really difficult to even think that that could have played a role in losing that child. So there's a lot of hurt. It's hard. Sorry.
Kim feels deceived by her pastor husband, Brian. Now let's see how their 15-year-old daughter has been affected by all of this.
Julia, our oldest child, understood what was going on. She had to be that person I could lean on, and that was a lot of pressure for her.
I never thought this could happen to somebody in my family. I was really shocked. Why would he do that to our family behind closed doors? We have a lot of secrets, just as everyone else does. Before I found out about my dad and drugs, we didn't really see eye to eye all the time. He would forget things sometimes, so we had a lot of arguments about that. It's hard to just jump into being buddy-buddy and be like, oh, it's okay. I can't really take back words that were said. It was really hard watching my mom go through everything. Sometimes when it was just me and her, then she'd cry in front of me, and that was when I think we need each other most. It's really hard to see my mom like that because, you know, you just can't fix everything.
What's your reaction to hearing her talk about
It's
that?
hard to watch. My kid's been really affected by this. Julia's the oldest, so she knew what a rehab was. My younger children don't really quite understand. He never expressed any differences in personality. It's not like they experienced this drug addict father and then he was gone. He sat down and played with them. He made dinner. He came home. It was...
I wore a mask for years because I was scared. I was ashamed. I felt like a hypocrite. I was a hypocrite. And I knew once it progressed to the heroin and meth that if she found out that I would lose everything. I would lose my wife. I would lose my kids.
I've often said addiction is a family disease, and I hate that your 15-year-old was pulled into this.
The night he left, I just laid on my floor and cried. And I looked at all 5 of my children snuggling my bed. And I had no one. I didn't know what to do. I didn't want to lean on her, but she was going to be there with me with the kids. She knows what's going on. And I did try to hide my feelings from them. I did go away because I didn't want to be strong for them, but it was very difficult.
But she sat up nights with you.
She did.
And you cried,
She wanted
and you
to know.
talked.
She wanted to be there for me because she knew that I was going into my closet and crying when the kids would go to bed so that I could make sense of it all and find peace.
We're using this situation to educate others.
Yeah.
Then I got to tell you, you don't ask children to deal with adult issues.
I agree.
As overwhelming as it is to you, can you imagine what it's like to a 15-year-old or younger that doesn't have any ability to make a decision to leave or to stay or to cope or to not? I mean, they're helpless. They're in a situation that they have no power to change it, but yet they have the burden of its reality. And that's the worst situation that a child can possibly be in.
Just in that moment, I don't think you really think things through because...
I said you do what you know how to do at the time. And let me tell you something about him. I don't know whether you're going to remain clean and sober or not at this point. Neither do you.
Right.
That's a day at a time. What I can tell you is that this is a serious disease. It is resistant to treatment. It is subject to relapse, but it is manageable. And because of what you were using, the opiates you were using, the meth that you were using, you have brain damage.
Yeah.
You have brain damage. It may take 18 months or more for it to heal, if it does.
Right.
He's not back.
I see pieces of him.
But he is not back yet.
I know.
He's going to question his relationship with God. He's going to question his spirituality. He is going to find a difficult time remembering certain things. I'm talking about you like you're not here, but I'm just telling you that this is the reality. He has brain damage the same as if he'd gone through a windshield of a car. So you have a tough road ahead here, and you are subject to some real serious emotional problems because of what's happened. You've had some vulnerable times. You've been through a miscarriage.
6 weeks before I found out.
6 weeks before you found out.
And I was 4 months pregnant.
Mentally, emotionally. I mean, when you're 4 months pregnant and that happens, that is, the impact on your body is huge. The impact on your mind, your emotions, your hormones are huge. Then, 6 months after that, he comes in and says, oh, by the way, your entire existence, it's a lie, it's a sham, I'm a heroin addict. Okay, so this gets dumped on you. It gets dumped on you, and you're saying, oh my gosh, what next?
Well, and that's how I feel. I feel like every day I wake up and, you know, I get dressed and I look like this and I try to keep going on, but I'm tired. And it's hard because I know that I'm trying to be strong for my kids, for Brian, but I haven't really had a time to grieve.
And you haven't given your feelings a voice in all of this. Now, when I come back, I'm going to give Kim an opportunity to do something that is critically important in putting her foot on the road to having this family get a chance to return to some degree of normalcy. We'll be right back.
Every day right now is a challenge. I worry that Brian may use again. To say that I didn't think about it would be very naive.
I'm back with Kim and Brian. Now, this is a family that is spinning at this point because after 10 years of marriage, Kim has discovered that her pastor husband, Brian, is in fact a drug addict. Kim, I'm going to ask you to do something very important right now. I want you to look Brian in the eye, and I know that's hard to do.
Yeah.
I want you to look him in the eye right now, and don't look away. Just look each other in the eye. And I'm going to talk to you, but I don't want you to look away. Don't look at me. Because once you found out that the man you thought you married, the man that you thought was your light, rock, was an addict and a liar, you haven't really looked at him. Look at him now. Is if there's ever a chance to overcome this for real, then you got to deal with the truth. And you've got to tell him right now from your heart what this has done to you. Tell him the truth. Give your feelings a voice. Don't worry about his feelings and emotions. Give your feelings a voice. Look at him. Talk through the tears. Just give your feelings a voice. Tell him you have no idea what you did to me.
You have no idea how hard it's been, how badly I've been hurt, how empty I feel, how alone I have felt, how much pressure I've had on me to care for our family.
I feel like every day is a struggle. And I haven't had time to... I feel like I've lost myself because I've lost you.
Don't talk from your head, talk from your heart. Tell him what he did to you.
He hurt me.
Tell him, say, how dare you do this to me and our family? How dare you?
You betrayed us, our trust, our children. I just don't know how you could have done that to us. I try to make sense of it because I think initially you blame yourself that you're not enough, or the kids, and you ask yourself why. But I need to know the answer to that. I feel like I'm constantly asking myself, why did you hurt us so bad?
Tell him what he took away from you.
You took away.
Don't say he, tell him. You took it from me. Tell him.
You took away our marriage, our family, our trust. I just want you to know I'm not gonna stay. If you use again, I won't, and you know that.
No.
You know, you've taken so much from me and the kids, and you really have to own this. This recovery is yours. This is your addiction. The kids and I didn't deserve this.
I know.
Tell him what you want.
I want to see the man that I married. I want to see you in your eyes again because you haven't been there for so long. I want to see the father that I know you are. I know you love those kids. I know you're an amazing husband, friend, but I know the addiction is taken all of those things and has brought a new person in our life. I want us to have a life together where we can laugh and have dreams and goals and not just exist. I feel like my life right now is just existing, and that's hard.
Tell him you deserve better.
And I deserve better. I know I do.
No, you do.
The kids deserve better.
Do you believe he can do this?
I know he can do this. He knows that I'm his biggest supporter in life. I know the man he is. And I know what addiction has taken from it, stole from his life. But I know what he can become. I've always believed that. He has great things that he's going to do. And that's why I'm here.
Then tell him, I believe in you, but you got to show me.
I believe so much in you. You know that. I believe in you more than anybody in this world. But you have to prove to me. Trust has to be earned. It is something that's going to take a long time. And this is something you have to do on your own. I can't do it for you. And that's very hard for me, you know that, because I like to do everything for everyone. But this is the one thing I can't do for you. You have to want this.
We'll be right back.
I am Marion Jones. People hailed me as one of the fastest women in the world. I had the fame, I had the fortune, I had everything, and I lost it all because I lied.
It is with a great amount of shame that I tell you that I have betrayed your trust.
My next guest seemed to have it all, but her world fell apart because she chose to lie at a time when the truth mattered most.
On the track, Marion Jones awed fans with her speed and superstar smile.
In the 2000 Olympics, I became the first woman to win 5 medals in a single Olympic Games. People hailed me as one of the fastest women in the world. After the 2000 Games, I was definitely ranked as the best athlete in the world at that time. I won pretty much every race that I ran. I was world champion in the 100, 200 meters. I was on the cover of Time magazine. I was Athlete of the Year, ESPY award winner. I had the fame, I had the fortune. Everything seemed to be going in the right direction. I had everything and I lost it all because I lied.
In 2003, Marion was subpoenaed to testify in a federal investigation into illegal steroid distribution. Now, she was granted immunity from prosecution. It's called Queen for a Day, but she had to tell the truth.
I was given performance-enhancing drugs, and unbeknownst to me, they were what was termed later as the clear, or THG. I was subpoenaed by the federal government to be a part of the investigation into Valco. Towards the end of the interview, they pull out this little vial. It has a substance in it. At that moment, I realized that what he's, shaking in front of my face is something that had been given to me. In the blink of an eye, I thought about the years and years that I had trained. I thought about the lifestyle that I was living. If I told them that I had been given this substance, all of it could potentially be taken away. The federal investigator asked me about the substance and if I recognized it, and I told him that I didn't, and it was a lie. He asked me if I had ever taken a performance-enhancing drug called the Clear, and I told him no, and that was a lie. He asked me if I had ever taken any performance-enhancing drug, and I told him no, I hadn't, and it was a lie.
Okay, now Marion has written a new book describing her fall from grace and her journey to rebuild her life, and it's called On the Right Track. So welcome, Marion.
Thank you.
Please.
Thank you.
I probably should recuse myself from this interview because I have been a huge fan of yours for many years. Tell me why you decided at this point to do this book and talk about this, because it would be so much easier for you to just stay in the background on this, right, and live your life on a much smaller stage.
Well, for a lot of reasons, I decided to write the book. For so long, my story was written for me. And I felt that I owed it to my family, I owed it to my fans, my supporters around the world to share with them, in my own words, my journey. Even bigger than that, Dr. Phill, I have 3 little kids at home, and I teach my kids, my husband and I want to be a living example to them, that once you make a mistake, your life is not over. It's what you do after that, and I wanted for them to see that I did not give up, that I continued to help people make better lives for themselves by looking at my story and hopefully seeing the struggles that I've been through and making it better for them.
I'm a fan of the book, and I really recommend you read this book. It's not about athletics, it's about being a human being and finding that inner strength. But you talk about what happened in there. In your view, first off, you did take performance-enhancing drugs.
That's correct. I was sitting in front of federal investigators in 2003, and they were showing me substances. They were pulling things out of their bag. I mean, this was in the span of an hour. And they shook something in front of my face, and I recognized it as something that had been given to me. But in that span of 30 seconds, I made the decision to lie because I didn't want to lose my reputation. I didn't want everything that came along with all of that, and so I decided to lie.
Now, you had been given immunity.
Mm-hmm. That's correct.
They said as long as you tell the truth, whatever, you're going to walk out of here.
Nothing can happen to you.
Legally,
correct.
But you knew when you answered that question that your reputation, your medals, everything you'd worked for would go down in a split second.
Would be gone.
So they put you in a bind, so you lied.
That's correct.
And at the time that you first took them, they were giving you these performance-enhancing drugs, and you didn't know what they were.
That's correct.
Was there a time, and I know the answer to some of these, but I want
Okay.
you to have a chance to talk about this. Was there a time when you did become aware that you clearly were not taking a supplement, you were taking a performance-enhancing?
Yes, in 2003, when the federal investigators showed me this substance, and I put it all together that what was in the news for months. I don't know if many people remember the Balco scandal and everything, all the athletes that were involved. That's when I realized that what was given to me was indeed this clear that everybody had been talking about in the news.
And you understand people are really skeptical about that.
I understand.
And they're very skeptical about it because you are obviously intelligent.
Correct.
You are a dialed-in, focused person. And they're skeptical that somebody would just come give you some unknown benign substance and you would take it and not know what it was. They're skeptical of that.
And I understand that. But I would like people to understand is that this is not just a random person who, knocked on my door and said, take this. This is somebody whom I trusted. This is somebody who was in my immediate inner circle, whom I thought wouldn't do anything to harm me.
And you thought this was flaxseed oil.
That's correct.
So at no time in your mind did you ever believe that you were cheating?
That's correct.
So you didn't cross the finish line in the Olympics or anywhere and have that tarnished because in the back of your mind you thought, I just won this race, but I had to cheat to do it.
Nope. When I crossed the finish line in Sydney, I was overcome with emotion from knowing that I had trained hard, that I was blessed with an incredible amount of talent, and that's the reason for the celebration.
At what point did you decide to come clean and tell the truth?
Anybody who tells a lie and you have to tell more lies to cover it up, that's what a lie does. You have to tell more and more until it just gets out of control. By 2007, I had already had my first child. I was pregnant with my second child, and I knew that I couldn't carry it anymore, that I wanted to start fresh. So I decided to plead guilty to lying to federal investigators.
We're going to take a break. We're going to talk about what it was like for Marion, because when she pled guilty, jail time was assigned. What was it like? We'll be right back.
March 5th, 2008, I walked inside of Carswell Federal Institution. I was a prisoner. Carswell smelled like a sweaty locker room that ended up in a public restroom. My time in Carswell was definitely the next step to hell.
Monday on an all-new Dr. Phill.
I want to see a ring on my finger or goodbye.
After 3 years.
So you can either commit or quit.
Is he ready?
You going to marry this girl?
That's Monday.
Marion Jones was once the world's top female athlete, a big winner at the 2000 Sydney Olympics. Now she's an admitted steroid user and convicted felon. And today she got the maximum sentence in a New York courtroom.
It is with a great amount of shame that I stand before you and tell you that I have betrayed your trust.
March 5th, 2008, I walked inside of Carswell Federal Institution. I was no longer Marion Jones. I was just a prisoner. One of the first things that I was required to do was a strip search. Carswell smelled like a sweaty locker room that ended up in a public restroom. Many nights I could not sleep. I feared for my safety. The guards would come in several times a night, slamming the doors, just doing everything to try and break you. A month and a half into my sentence, my roommate wanted to pick a fight. When I tried to leave, she blocked me from leaving. So I defended myself. I kicked her, I hit her, I did whatever I could. Could be the fastest woman in the world and have a hard time trying to get out, and that's really what it came down to. The fight landed me in solitary confinement for over 48 days. My time in solitary was definitely the next step to hell, but when I had so much time to reflect on my life, I made a decision that I control what happens to me. You make mistakes, but it's what you do after the mistakes that ultimately you are hopefully judged by.
Well, Marion's written a new book called On the Right Track, and you talk in the book about the fact that you think, as terrible as it was, that this was actually a blessing for you.
Yes, no doubt.
Why?
Well, I tell people, Dr. Phill, that very few of us as adults get an opportunity to spend so much quiet time reflecting on who we are. Well, I had 6 months of nothing but my thoughts, figuring out who I was, who I really wanted to be, and I don't think I would have, I say it's a blessing because I don't think I would have come to that point if I hadn't have gone to prison. I don't think I would have been in a place to really prioritize my life and figure out what's important and what's not important, and that life is not about sport. It's about how you can give back, how you can help, and I had to be put in prison for 6 months to realize that, but in a way I'm glad I did. Sure, I know that I wouldn't have gotten to where I am today without having gone through that.
Would it be a worse transgression for you to have cheated in the races than it would be to have lied to the federal prosecutors?
Yes. And I say that because, you know, God has given me this gift and this talent, and to have done something knowingly, I think is worse. You know, a lot of people might not be happy to hear it than to have lied.
Skeptics will say, you know, it's one thing for her to say, yeah, she lied about something she didn't know about, but she will never, ever come clean and admit that she cheated. And you are clear. There is no equivocation in your mind or voice. You never consciously made a decision to take a performance-enhancing drug.
100% clear. And I tell people this, that I paid the ultimate sacrifice. Like, I have spent 6 months in prison, Dr. Phill. I have, my reputation has been dragged through the mud. The fame, the fortune, all of that is gone. And now I'm at a point where, how can everything that I've done, how can it help change the lives of people? How can it help people make better decisions? And I feel blessed that I've had the opportunity to get back into sport now and hopefully inspire and motivate people. I mean, this past season, I played for the Tulsa Shock. I was a 34-year-old rookie with 3 kids, and having been through everything that I did, and people ask me, why did I decide to go back into sport? Why did I put myself out there again? And I tell folks, I say, you know, I hope that when people see me on the court, I inspire them that whatever they're dealing with in their own life, whether it's divorce, loss of job, death in the family, if they see me and everything I've been through, and I can turn my world around in 2.5 years and be a rookie in the WNBA, that anybody can change their situation around.
Well, I have a problem with what happened at the federal level, because I think there can be an abuse of authority. And I think if federal prosecutors can get somebody in and say, okay, we're going to give you immunity against any legal consequences here, but the questions we're going to ask you can cause you to incriminate yourself hugely in every aspect of your life, you're between a rock and a hard place at that point. So it's like, either ruin your life or go to jail.
Ruin your life or ruin your life.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there's nowhere to turn, there's nowhere to run. And I have a problem with that. Life is good.
Yeah, life is so much better. You know, things are in order in my life, and I'm really on the right track. I see my message and what I've shared with people. I see people get it, that when encountering difficult situations in your life, that you need to take a break. That's what I tell people. Consult somebody with life experience who will give it to you straight. Like, Dr. Phill, that's not a good idea. You know, think it through, and then make a wiser decision.
You're making it work, and I'm proud of you for doing it. And I'm proud of you for writing this book and coming here and talking about it as well. Marion Jones, thank you so much. Are there ways to spot a liar? I'll tell you what I think when we come back. Talked a lot today about how a lie can destroy your life. But the question that everybody always asks me is, how is it possible to know if someone is lying to you? Do y'all think you can tell when somebody's lying to you? Do you really? If you think you can tell when somebody's lying to you, raise your hand. Okay, well, there are telltale signs that everybody hears about, right? There's even a show on TV now called Lie to Me. And they talk about all of these things. And one of the things they say is, and I say they, there's research about this, that too much or too little eye contact, like if somebody's staring at you like a dead trout, there's a good chance that they may be lying to you, or if they won't look you in the eye at the time. Overemphasizing details. If somebody is trying to really deflect and not get you thinking, then there are those that say, well, if they overemphasize obscure points that have nothing to do with it, they're trying to filibuster so you don't ask another question, bad sign. Fidgeting, you know, as the person you're talking to, all nervous and everything. You often see kids do this when they're telling a tale, you know, they're all over the place. There are those that say touching your nose. If somebody touches their nose, that means they're lying. And they have their lips pursed where they're kind of breathing real fast instead of in a relaxed way, that is a telltale sign of lying. And you'll see that all over the internet, all over research. But I got some news for you. There's not one study that suggests that those things help you predict when somebody's lying. And they do this simply by having somebody come in and lie and have people judge based on those. Then they have somebody come in and tell the truth and have somebody judge based on those. And they've never been able to show that you can find a liar any better by looking at those factors than any others. So when you go home and you're looking at your husband and he's fidgeting, it may just mean that he's wanting to go do something else while you're talking. It may not mean that he's lying. I'm just saying. We'll be right back. Now, Brian, I just had you and Kim sit down and I had you listen. I didn't ask you to say anything. I had you listen because she needs to give a voice to her feelings. And there's something else that I'm going to ask you to do.
Okay.
Dr. Urschel is the chief medical strategist for interhealth.com. And he is an addiction specialist that is world-renowned. He's in Dallas, Texas. And I'm going to ask you to fly there and sit down with him because I want him to medically manage your cravings, because I think he can take those cravings away 95+% and give you a huge leg up on getting through this first period of time.
Thank you.
You need to be involved in Al-Anon. You need to be there, I mean, with religious commitment. And we're going to offer whatever resources to you we can for you and for the children to get through this. We're closing ranks around you guys, okay? We're going to turn this around because you deserve to have what it is that you want. So we're going to make it equal. All right, I want to thank Marion Jones for being here today. Her new book, On the Right Track, is in bookstores now, and everyone in the audience is going home with a copy. Thanks for being here. So long. Thank you all.